Okay, so I'm back. I feel like that was a really good stopping point too. Like it just kind of naturally happened. But part of my reversion story. Yeah, was over at Rashida's house, and first we were just comparing the similarities between the cultures, African American cultures and Middle Eastern cultures, and just how not weird that was for me to have people like feeding me. Because like if you go to any Southern Black grandmama's house, when you walk in, it's gonna be something made already, a cake, a pie, something, and then she's gonna say, "Baby, you want something to eat? I got some leftover greens." And I got some cornbread in here. You want me to throw you on a little meat? We got turkey and ham in the oven already made. Do you want me to? You're not going to leave until you eat something. I personally, not being a big girl, I'm a big girl in my mind. Like, my sister be telling me that I'm an honorary big girl, but like, I have a slender frame. And a lot of the times these grandmamas will be like, "Baby, you sure you look like you need to eat." Which is not an insult at all. No. Okay. But anywho, so we started off talking about those similarities. And then we started talking about the similarities between Islam and Christianity, which there were so many. I mean, the major differences was that some Christians believe that Jesus is God and they are one and the same. That is one of the things that I agree with Jehovah's Witnesses 100% on. They do not believe that Jesus is God. They believe that Jesus is the Son of God. Now, I don't 100% believe that anymore because I do not believe, as a Muslim, I do not believe that God has children in the physical sense. I believe that is beneath him. He does not need to do that. But in the whole "we are all his children" type thing, I'm down with that. That makes sense to me. It didn't make sense to me for him to, that Jesus was his only begotten son, especially with Adam being in the picture. But that's a whole nother story. So we started talking about those things. And then we also started talking about the difference between the Nation of Islam and Islam. I had no clue that there was a difference. Now, being a pro-Black person, growing up, my mom used to listen to Farrakhan all the time. Being Christian or not, Farrakhan was a staple on how majestic Blackness was. You feel me? And what we could do as a community to correct the things that have been done to us and that we have in turn done to ourselves because of the situations that we have been put in. Neither here nor there. I will get off that soapbox. But we started talking about Farrakhan, and I explained to her how I had never really met a Muslim woman before and just how beautiful I thought hijab was. And I told her why I had started covering my hair, because at that point I covered my hair every single day, and she thought it was beautiful that I had seen in Christianity where that is a thing. You know what I mean? So that was pretty much the whole first conversation. And then I went over a few more times after that, and I had questions about Islam at that point. And like, I'd already had questions about my faith that Islam answered, and through Rashida, Islam answered for me. And then she gave me my own Quran. And then she invited me to the masjid, or mosque. It was just step, baby steps, but I was like being drawn. I was feeling good. I was understanding things that I hadn't understood my entire life as a Christian. I studied and I took my time and I tried to talk to my ex-husband about things, and that ended up being a major point of contention in our marriage because I started to feel Islam in my heart. I started studying and I started praying and I started dressing differently, and he did not believe that we could have separate faiths and still be a family, and basically told me that if I converted to Islam, he would divorce me, which was really hard for me because I felt it in my heart at this point. But I was married before I started this journey, and even after studying and starting the journey, I still learned that in Islam, my marriage was half of my deen. So basically that means that it was a test for me to become a better person. Marriage is a test. That's like, it is what it is, I just did everything in secret. I kept it to myself. I studied to myself. I would go in the other room to pray, which I wasn't praying regularly or properly at that point. But, you know, it's more about what's in your heart. And that's where Rashida really, my heart is over here. It's more about what's in your heart. And that's what Rashida really emphasized to me. And eventually I told her that I had to take my shot. There was no question. I could no longer, you know, what really ended up being a turning point for me is after the miscarriage, I had a lot of anger towards God and I didn't understand. And I really wanted a child. And at that point in my marriage, I also thought a child would fix things that were going wrong because we had a lot of other issues outside of Islam. That was just one of the biggest points of drama. But I couldn't stop. I knew what I knew and I knew what was in my heart and that's just what it was. And so I had prayed for Allah to bless me with a baby if he saw fit. It wasn't istikhara prayer and I didn't fully understand istikhara prayers at the time. Eventually I will do a video about vocabulary just so y'all kind of understand what I'm saying. But istikhara prayer is basically a prayer to ask Allah for the things that you want. Like, if it's something that he wants you to have, make it easy for me. Bring it to me. Or bring me to it, basically. But if it is something that is not for me, that you would not have for me, make it difficult and take it away. That prayer works. Just saying, it works. Did that, got pregnant. A lot happened during my pregnancy. My ex-husband's mother passed away, which was very hard on him, obviously, because it was his mother, but it was hard on me as well because I had really grown to love that woman, and she was an amazing woman. And God rest her soul, she was just amazing. But I felt that I really needed her for that pregnancy, and I think in retrospect I did. We ended up having to move in with his grandmother because she needed help, and you know, he and I were still having a lot of problems. I was covering completely at the time, and he said some things along the lines of not being attracted to me anymore, which, FYI, fellas, not something you want to say to a pregnant woman. I pulled away from my religion. I pulled away from Islam. I thought that by doing that, it could help save our marriage. And of course it didn't. And I just became miserable and kind of tailspun into despair. You know, the only thing that was keeping me afloat was my little girl when she got here. That was the only thing that really kept my head on straight because I knew I had to be strong for her. Yeah, not too long after her first birthday, I left and we embarked on the long and tedious and annoying journey of divorce. But through that, I actually got back close to my faith. Now, mind you, when I pulled away, I kind of went buck wild. Not buck wild in the sense that like Girls Gone Wild and all that type of stuff, but I went back to how I was, you know what I mean? Which was not an ideal Christian to begin with. So I went back to that. And, you know, being a Christian is nowhere near what you need to do to be a Muslim. So I still felt that I was a Muslim in my heart, but I stopped covering. I started back eating pork. I started back drinking, which I had cut all that out. And just let me tell you, the first thing to me that is the hardest for a Southern Black person to do is stop eating pork, because there is pork in everything Black people cook. I mean, I had to ask about the collard greens. I had to ask about the green beans. I can't have the ham. I don't do chitlins already. That's just nasty. I don't do pig feet. I don't do pig ears. I don't do hog maws. I don't do none of that stuff. I don't do hog head sauce. I don't do none of that. That's nasty. But I really enjoy bacon and pepperoni, so I had to let that go. But like I said, I stopped drinking. I was covering. I ended up going back to all of that. Just because, like, when you get divorced from being married young, it's basically like moving out of your parents' house and you just get to do all the stuff that you couldn't do there. You know what I mean? So I kind of did that after my divorce. But